put these in. What really upsets me is I just gave you a piece of paper that literally they've already covered the footprint of this base. What really upsets me is my congressman voted against the 2009 bill, and in fact has never voted for any incentives, and yet, when he came out in the press enterprise, he said, hey, you know what, sounds reasonable to me. Well, as you know, Corona just fought solar voltaic panels on top of a Walmart. They didn't want them there. Greg Smith, he wrote, he said that, you know, they're trying to, or in their report, they said they would separate the panels and that might help. Well, I'm going to bring Dr. Tyler up here in a second. There's studies that say if you turn the panels and widen them, it's even worse for a lake effect. My issue with it is show me the study. So we get to be the guinea pigs. What if they're wrong? The other thing I don't like is it 10 acres? Is it 18 acres? I don't like the fact that Fish and Game from the state doesn't kick in unless the Navy decides to sell the power. Well, they admitted right in front of us that, well, they're open to that. The game that's played is they all of a sudden start selling it. Oh, gee, we're sorry, we decided after the fact to sell it. And in my conversations with California Fish and Game, they had some real issues with this particular project. Federal Fish and Game, I don't know. Like I said, nobody's ever contacted us. I know that one of the things that happened on the historic side is when historians that are brought in from the outside, they'll say, hey, there's a historic district here. They disappear. And all of a sudden you got a facilities planner or something coming in and say, oh no, that guy was wrong. Well, I worked with Margaret Wallerstein for almost 8 years. And Margaret, I mean, I know she was having trouble with some of the stuff that was going there, and we had some very specific environmental plans, and the guy from Fish and Game would sit there and would really work them out. She just disappeared, because I really wanted to know. If Margaret were to tell me it was okay, these solar panels, but they kind of said, Captain Hardy said, well, you know, she just kind of left, we wish her well. It also bothered me at that very meeting. He said, when we finish the environmental study, we will find that it will have no impact on the environment. I mean, it's such BS. And you know, one of the things that's happening in the United States right now is we're fed up. The truth of the matter is the Navy, not the Navy, the NAVSEA side, Captain Murray, straight up aces. That guy, if he tells me something, I'm going to believe him. But the Seal Beach side has been beating the crap out of me now for 8 years. I've been called a liar. I've been told they don't have to listen to us, when the truth of the matter is they act as if they're above the law. The bottom line is I don't want to experiment next to Lake Norconian. I also don't like the fact that I was sitting in a meeting when a captain in the U.S. Navy stood in front of me and said, hey, if we put up these panels, we will be BRAC-proof. That guy's supposed to be out of the Navy the moment he said that, because what he's saying is base realignment and closure, let's do a gimmick in order to save ourselves with BRAC. Well, as everybody knows, the last 2 BRACs, Norco has been right there for the Navy. We voted 5-0 to support them. I don't believe that this base needs a gimmick to stay open. What's really interesting is if you look at the way the Seal Beach folks have dealt with the ACHP, which is the federal guys, the environmental people, and the state, it's very similar to what happened that formed this base to begin with. The submarines didn't work, and everybody sort of patted everybody on the back and said, hey, you know, we'll let it pass. And what happened is the torpedoes didn't work and they killed sailors. Same thing happened in the late 50s. The missiles didn't work. They all patted each other on the back and said, don't worry, they'll fix them tomorrow. And they didn't work. And now we have, it's not as dramatic, but it's the same thing. And I just think that I'd like to see the Fish and Game findings. All we have is Greg Smith's word for it. And what I'd really like to do is, if possible, I'd like to get a resolution from our council, not just to the Navy, stating, hey, wait a minute, we really don't think this is a good idea. We don't want to be your experimental station. You're already covered by an agreement, the largest purchase of military power in the history of the military. And I don't quite understand what that means. I'd like to know exactly what it's going to cost taxpayers. And then the second thing is I'd really like to ask Congressman Calvert, who apparently is very upset with me, and I don't really care, but the truth of the matter is, if you're voting against these incentives, why is it okay to vote against them, except for this Navy base? We support the Navy, everybody knows it. But I'd really like to know the answer to that. So I'd like to just, if possible, get a resolution and state to the Navy, hey, we don't want these things, and then ask Congressman Calvert to give us a hand. And so that's kind of where I'm at. Now I'd like to bring up Stan. Now if you could come up and maybe talk a little bit. and tell us how bad these things are, please? Stan, by the way, wrote a letter. He went to the open house that we had. He's an environmentalist, but this is a little bit outside his scope, but he's done quite a bit of research on it.
Okay, well, thanks for giving me a chance to address things here. It's true that I'm not claiming to be an expert on solar panel research, or anything like that. I have a background in earth science at UC Irvine for about 17 years. Now I'm a college chemistry professor here at Norco College. I got a pretty eclectic background with degrees in physics and chemistry, and I wound up reinventing myself as a biogeochemist and land use change guy and an environmental chemist and all kinds of stuff when I was at UCI. Now I'm back to teaching, got basic chemistry.
Can I jump in just one sec, just so people know, Stan made a life choice. So he could be with his kid. He decided to teach at Norco College, but he actually operated a very significant laboratory at UC Irvine. I think that kind of needs to be said. He sort of downplayed it, but.
Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. So I used to write big grants for big money. Had a big research group. Had postdocs and visiting scientists and professors, and traveled all over the world in field sites. But I didn't study solar energy. So I went to the Navy presentation on March 7th a couple years ago. And I wrote down a lot of things. I had some questions and some concerns. And unfortunately, I had no idea this meeting was taking place today. So I was blindsided. I was at a soccer game with my kid. And
it's pitch hitting.
I think there was somebody else who was supposed to be here. But I've got my notes from a couple years ago. And I don't know if some of these kind of questions have been answered since then. I haven't kept total track of what's going on here, so just want to make a few comments. One of the things I did 2 years ago was comb the literature, which is something I've been doing all my life for various, reasons, for different scientific projects and things I work on and papers I write and things. And I came up with a really interesting U.S. Fish and Wildlife Forensics Laboratory study of avian mortality from the big solar panel sites. There's one out in Blythe, there's one at Ivanpah, there's one at Desert Center in the Mojave. Those are the three largest ones in the United States right now. And I was looking at what the similarities are between what those guys have to deal with and what would happen on smaller scale things, although I don't know that 18.5 acres is exactly small. I mean, it's not as large as those big facilities in the desert, but it's not small. So anyway, so I just want to make a few comments here. One of the things that the Navy talked about was whether they hadn't decided yet whether to use fixed tilt panels or go with sun tracker type, which would actually rotate slightly on a pivot to track the sun as it moves across the sky during the day. Those are more efficient. They save you. They get you more energy, more bang for your buck, right? Because you get more concentrated sunlight. That could make things like more energy on less panels. At that time, 2 years ago, they didn't know if they're going to use it or not. That seems to be an advantage to that. At that time, we had no estimates of bird deaths. We still don't have any. We didn't have any from the wastewater authority solar power farm down by the River Road. I don't know that we still have any of those. I haven't kept looking for those, but there wasn't any information on what looked like the most similar project in the nearby area, which isn't that far away, right, down off the River Road. And I thought, well, that would be a good thing to see, but what they're seeing. I thought it was kind of curious that the Navy wasn't sure whether it would generate 25 or 50% of their electrical power needs. They were pretty sure they were going to get 1.5 megawatts of energy or electricity. And I thought, okay, so you got the amount you want to get, and now the question is, how efficient are your panels, right? So they mentioned something about surface fencing around the site not having any effect on ground wildlife, and I thought, well, one of the big effects of any of the places that have bird deaths, and there are some places with mega bird deaths, is that ground predators are in there to clean things up, right? So if you do have bird deaths and you don't have a way for predators to get at them, then what do you do with all these birds, okay, that are dead or dying? Now, I thought that was kind of interesting. And how does it affect our wildlife? And people just thought, we're fencing off an area and it won't have an impact on, whether they live or die, whether it changes our small mammal or, other wildlife on the ground, but it doesn't. But you got the effect of disease and, waste disposal of bodies and stuff if there's bird nests. The birds don't all just land right on top of the solar panels when they die either. If they die, if they get injured, so they're probably going to wind up on the Norco campus for one thing, fly off and then drop dead. That could be interesting. They might be all over town. Anyway, this is a large enough scale. I thought it was surprised me there was no environmental impact study planned at that time. There was an environmental assessment, which is not nearly on the same scale. So I thought, what's been done with that since then? Just some things to keep in mind. Anyway, the big study that I read about, that was published with 4 authors. One's a U.S. Fish and Game on-site veterinarian in the forensics lab. Another one was a wildlife photographer that's not just somebody that takes pictures of calendars. They're kind of like a wildlife coroner. They take pictures of wildlife in all stages of death, help establish cause of death, things like that. There was another private practice veterinarian that's consulting all the time with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and a 4th person who's on the site with good credentials. And anyway, their report on what happened at Desert Center, or what's happening at Desert Center, and Desert Sunlight near Desert Center in Mojave, Ivanpah's huge tower design, and the Genesis parabolic mirror type thing out in Blythe. Those are pretty different designs, but they all have some real similarities. They found all of those have man-made lakes nearby, in which one of the objects of that was to maybe the birds flying over desert regions are looking for water. If there's no water around, maybe they're going to hit a solar panel, right? If you build a bunch of artificial lakes there, then the idea was, okay, they're going to land on the lakes now, and they'll leave the solar panels alone. That doesn't happen at any of those 3 sites. They still dive bomb right into the solar panels. Or in the case of Ivanpah, they actually wind up dying of extreme heat because it's all focused upward into this water tower, which is heated to steam to, actually generate electricity the old-fashioned way with steam turbine flow. But it's generated by solar light, focused and reflected up to heat water. So that's different from saying, okay, I got photovoltaic panels that generate electricity by moving electrons around directly from the panels. But anyway, so looking at our panels, if the Navy makes them tilt panels, if the Navy makes them spread out, so they're not just one continuous sea of 10 acres and one continuous sea of 8.5 acres. That didn't seem to make a difference at the big facilities. It still looks like a place to land or try to get water to a bird, and they might go there even though they're near the Santa Ana River, for example, or Lake Narconian. It is a migratory bird route. We've got a lot of bird loss. I grew up around the Irvine area where UCI used to be on 1,500 acres, largest acreage University of California site in the state, and one of the least developed when I first was going there. 6,000 students instead of 25,000. And over the years I saw the Back Bay cut down to nothing, and feeds out into Newport, and Back Bay is fed by the San Joaquin Marsh, which is on our Irvine property, and just cut down. So what happens is this state, as a general rule, has basically taken away about 92 or 3% of the wetlands they ever had for ocean and your shore birds. So birds that live most of their lives over the oceans and large lakes still have to lay their eggs on land, right? So we've lost a lot of marsh, a lot of wetlands, a lot of everything else over the years, and so migratory birds and birds that are looking for places to land, and birds that are near inland, but need water. We're running out of birds. Okay, any study will show you that. So songbirds, every other kind of bird, hummingbirds are down, songbirds are down, large birds of prey are down, and it just keeps getting worse. I'm thinking this is another way to make it worse potentially, right? Here we got a source of water that birds use in Southern California that, out where we are is pretty pristine. When you go to the Santa Ana River in Anaheim, it's a big cement culvert. It's pretty dry, right? But out here you can see animals, you can see, nature taking its best course. So just things that I was worried about 2 years ago that I'm still worried about. And I'm a scientist. I'm into progress. I'm into new development and things like that. But I'm also an environmental scientist, so, you know, you gotta have a purpose, and you gotta look at all the things that are involved. I was surprised how many similarities there were to small-scale operations compared to these big ones they described in the avian mortality study that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife made specifically for these huge facilities out in the desert. So I think, okay, this layout for the panel still matters, even on our scale. And nobody at that thing 2 years ago was answering very many questions about what do you do if you see, you know, birds dying off? What's your mitigation strategy? What will you do? There was an ornithology major, somebody, some PhD from ornithology from Cornell that was out there. She was a consultant for the Navy that day. And she said, well, we'll keep track of how many birds are dying. I go, yeah, but what do you do if they are dying? And you know, they're not thinking about that right now, okay? So if they have any kind of mortality, some of the things you could do is you could sacrifice time of day, right? During major flyover times a day, you shut off all those panels and you tilt them so the birds can't even see them. That's expensive, okay? And you're not generating electricity while you're doing it. So the question is, what is the Navy or anybody who's running this thing willing to do to alleviate some of the problems that we have, right? They weren't addressed 2 years ago. They might be thinking about that now, but I don't know. You know, I'm sorry I really didn't have anything prepared. I just got notes that are almost 2 years old. They're not over 2 years. They're just about 2 years old. And I didn't know about this till kind of early in the evening, and I just kind of rushed over here and I'm kind of summarizing stuff I knew from 2 years ago, but that's all I have to say right now. You know, something to think about. If we can get more information on the Navy before they go through with everything and, you know, do it the way they want to do it without really thinking about our concerns, I think it would be good if we could, you know, pin them down on some of this stuff.
Thank you, Stan.
Thanks.
So for me, in essence, you know, they're trying to, in trying to save the environment, they may damage the environment. What's really frustrating is across the nation, you have all these bases because the edict, the mandate in 2009 was to have a percentage of DoD bases that are covered with renewable energy, and everybody is trying to keep their base open. And so you have this just sea of very expensive solar panels where the savings are not all that significant. So that's where I'm at. I'm kind of hoping that we can send a letter to the Navy and maybe protest and maybe get Congressman Calvert to help us. Greg?
I don't want you calling me in the morning, Kevin. You know, I appreciate your passion. I do. And these are some of my concerns, though, that, you know, I started getting involved with active and passive solar back in the 70s in residential and commercial construction, and maybe by osmosis learned a little bit about it. What kind of frustrates me with the whole deal, you know, I'll look at, you know, like Obama and Solyndra and that whole scam of pushing renewable energy. And then I look at, you know, where the Navy makes this statement of, you know, that, which you had mentioned, that we're going to spend millions of dollars to save $65,000 a year in energy costs, which is the equivalent of a military-grade toilet seat. You know, so I have difficulty with some of that logic. But from the city standpoint is that the city and staff, you've gone to Sacramento, you've visited with SHPO, you've gone to 2 U.S. senators, you've gone to a congressperson, none of them care, okay? And that attitude, I mean, to me is why Trump's popular, that big government, they don't care anymore. And that is part of the frustration I think that a lot of people feel. So it all gets down to the end of the day to me, and it's that our Navy base in Norco, they're partners in our community, but they're just following orders. And what will a resolution help? I guess is my question. that the guys here on the base, they may see everything at fault with it, but they're gonna follow orders that are given to them.
I guess
That's kind of
we can tell our kids that. Well, you know what, the Navy, that's the Navy, that's what everybody says, that's what's really sad, is they go, oh, that's the Navy, Kevin, that's the Navy. No, the Navy is about integrity. And the reality is, you're absolutely right, they do care, because we've pissed them off. The reality is, let's tell our kids that. Go to the ROTC, where the first thing they say out of their mouth is, we're gonna have integrity. Why? Why? U.S. captain stands in front of a whole room full of people and says, let's beat BRAC by putting in phony solar panels. Where's the integrity in that? He's saying this is how we will beat the taxpayer way of looking at the finances of this base. I don't know. I mean, I see your point. We can just give up. But maybe a resolution may not help. Maybe it will. Maybe it will bring some attention to this. I know attention's coming to it. You know, we're trying to go down the road as far as we can go. At some point, yeah, maybe they'll put him in. Maybe we'll win. Maybe they'll put him in another base. Maybe somebody will finally write the story and really understand how deep this goes, how systemic it is. Maybe not. But what do we tell our kids? Sorry, we give up. It's the Navy. They're just too big. Ted?
Well, I'm going to start off by saying there's a lot of misinformation out there. First of all, these are photovoltaic solar panels, not solar thermal energy panels. This is not a Bonaparte. You can't equate the two. No, well, I'm just saying, right? I'm not going to. But you can't equate the two. And all the research that I did, the Department of Fish and Game in BLM, they essentially addressed the biologics concerning wind energy because of the problems they had with the birds. The solar energy panels, the thermal panels at Ivanpah, and that was going on. A lot of it was addressing the desert tortoise in our area. There wasn't a whole lot on ADM biologics and things like that except on the solar thermal energy panels out at Ivanpah because of the heat generation and the birds dying in that, and because of the heat acceleration out there. So there isn't a lot of research done on it as far as the photovoltaic cells that are proposed over here. And photovoltaic has been around since the 1800s as some kind of a science. It's not new, it's gone through. So, you look at the differences. And as far as Lake Skinner's project, that is 5 to 6 acres, and that was done in 2007. And their negative declaration on it, no, it wasn't a full environmental assessment, but it was done there. And it did include the Department of Fish and Wildlife Region 6, as far as their input into what was going to occur in the biologics and the avian and the riparian lifestyles. They all had negative declarations. Of course, we have new science now, so that changes. The thing, and what people understand, there was an environmental assessment done. It's 463 pages. I know because I reviewed it, I will tell you that. And the one thing that most people don't understand is that these solar voltaic cells are not just this base. They are all of the Naval Weapons Assessment Station at CLB. They're going to put 5 of them on 5 installations that they cover in the region, Norco being one of them. And in their findings of no significant impact, the 10-page report here, they addressed our concerns. They addressed the concerns that were pointed out by this city in 2014 when the one was put in there. There could be some indirect but insignificant potential lake effect impacts associated with bird strikes on the solar photovoltaic arrays. The likelihood of a bird mortality associated with mistaking a solar PV panel array as a water body containing a food source is considered slight. Any potential impacts would not rise to the level of significance under the national program. There are no waters of the U.S., no federally listed plant species and no critical habitat for federally listed wildlife species within the project areas. Therefore, there was no significant impacts to biologics at this area. They addressed our concerns. They went ahead and addressed the project site as it pertains to the boundaries of the historic district. They addressed that in here. So when people said, well, there was nothing there and we're an experiment, they've done what everybody's asked to do. They did an environmental assessment. The same thing we ask when we do a major project. And we take that information because that's what they compile. These are done by various agencies. They put the information in. We did an environmental impact report on Silver Lakes, and we still use that today. I used to put input for law enforcement when I worked for the Sheriff's Department on environmental impact reports and negative declarations. Those documents are there, and that's what they base it on. So we're not experiment. We have asked them to do this. They have done their due diligence. This is their project. This is their property. 2005, the administration said, you need to look at alternative energy. When Obama came in 2009, he loves solar power. That's what they got. They're following orders. They've been told to put it in there throughout the United States. That's their property, and you know what? I'm going with their environmental assessment report. Thank you.
So, just a question, where's the boundary of the historic district?
According to them, where these panels are, it's not in there.
Do you know what a perimeter of a historic district is?
Kevin, it's in this report.
No, it's not.
Okay?
It's not.
Kevin, it's in here. It states in here what they found, their conclusion.
No, it's
I
not.
can't rewrite it for them.
All I can tell you is that you know that that isn't true.
I don't know it's not true.
Then my suggestion is maybe you realize that there's a whole bunch of history going on here, that when you say they've addressed those concerns, most certainly they have not. And didn't they address the concerns here? All those bases are listed here, every single one of them. Explain it.
Kevin?
No, seriously. If you're gonna accept this
Kevin, I'm
report,
going to accept the report because it was done there. That's what I'm doing. And as a councilperson, I'm accepting the report,
Okay.
as is.
and just so you know, I'll bet you can't defend it.
I don't have to. That's the Navy's report.
I got it.
I don't have to defend it. I have to accept it.
Well, okay.
Because this would be the same thing if this was an environmental
We're
impact
good.
report done like
Thank you.
anything we did.
Thank you, I
Thank
understand. I understand. Robin?
Well, I'm new to this, so I think I've made it kind of clear to both sides that I have a lot of homework to do. If there's one thing I've learned in my few short months here is I feel like you can't, and I feel horrible saying this, but I kind of feel like I can't trust anybody yet, and I've got to do my homework. There's two sides to every story. I think one thing I've learned, and I've gone through a lot of leadership training, and one thing I learned is our perception is so critically important. And I've been working myself to have the perception that not one person I encounter is coming to me with an issue, an idea, or a situation with an intention of malice or harm or ill intent. And I will tell you, this position on city council has been quite difficult in me living up to that. So with that being said, I am trying very hard to keep that in mind, and I need to do my research on the information presented by both sides, and I have not had the time to do that in the position that I am in.
Well, I read that letter from Greg Smith and everything. I've heard this back and forth, back and forth. I've studied solar. Sometimes I'm for it, sometimes I'm against it. I don't think I would ever put it on my property, but main reason would be the cost. I couldn't afford to put it on there and hope to recoup. But I think that every time we turn around, we've got something new that we're fighting our neighbor with over here. And that is their property. They have orders from the higher ups to install this stuff, and I don't think that I can support our staff, our city manager spending any more time writing resolutions or writing letters to the Navy to tell them we don't want them to do it, when I don't really think we can stop them from doing it. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, well, you know, it's, and I do actually understand where you're all coming from. And I guess birds and animals and our environment cross property lines. And I think at some point, when you really look at how they operate, and I do think that you've been here long enough to know that they will do a study like everybody else does to make it look the way they want it to look. But the reality is, at what point are we stewards of our environment as people? To say you accept that report, and that's the other thing the Navy does, is you say, well, let's look at your report. And they won't look at it because they can't defend it. And that's the truth. They can't defend this one, they can't defend the historic resources ones. But I do thank you, yeah.
May I interrupt you?
No, absolutely, sure, I'm done.
Tell me what is the specific of the resolution that you're proposing?
Well, for me, what I really think is that, one, they've already covered the footprint. I totally get that they want to save this base. I totally understand that. And so they're putting buildings outside the perimeter and they're doing all those different things. I think the resolution for me is that, as Ted admitted, there isn't any studies on the solar voltaic panels. So how do they know those conclusions are correct? And I have to equate it with what I've seen in the Historic Resources Survey, where they say, you know, stupid things like wheelchair basketball never happened, buildings are made of wood, and they've been doing it for decades, under orders. And so for me, I have enough evidence that I am very distrustful of their studies. Lake Skinner is a totally different environment than the environment we have here. And for me, I guess one of the things that I'd like to question our congressman is, you know, if you're voting against these huge subsidies, why is it that it's okay to do it at this Navy base? And, you know, the truth is, there are no studies on solar voltaic, so how do you do a report that says it's okay? And what we have letters from the ACHP, different places that we know are not true, based on only information from the Navy. Now I know, and you know what, I don't like saying this either, but the reality is there's a serious problem here. And if all of a sudden birds start dying, what Lisa Boselit told me is that when the carcasses hit the ground, they'll just make sure they pick them up before the predators get them. You have a whole riparian area just across the lake. So, I mean, you know, we're probably just spinning our wheels, as Berwin says.
Well, in one sense, I guess, and that's why I wanted to know more specific. I think that, you know, we need to be good neighbors with the Navy. They're part of our community. We're not going to be able to deny, you know, alternate energies. And I think that's kind of what, but I wanted to look at something specific instead of the, you know, let's not attack the, denying the construction of a certain building, whether it's wood or concrete.
Nobody has ever done that, but it's just.
But I think we drag in all these little peripheral arguments, and.
Well, the law is very clear. If you have a historic property, one of the reasons that they do not want that property to be, their naval history to be on the National Register is these solar panels come within that parameter. The joke is, they can do whatever they want. The whole premise of all of this is that, is the information that they are providing, is it accurate? And I contend, I'm sorry, it's not. I mean, they're fully within they say they aren't in the historic view shed, which means from the solar voltaic panels, you cannot see any of the buildings on the National Register. I can show you a picture right now of where those panels are gonna go, and it is right on the AIM. And I'm sorry that Bill Wilkman isn't here today, but it absolutely is in the view shed, and if you add the naval property to it, it absolutely covers that parameter. All it means is you enter a programmatic agreement with the city of Norco, and I got news for you, there's about 20 buildings there you could tear down. Now the solar panels I think would be damaging because you know, we only have one environment. I know it's their land, but they're in our city, and truthfully, I think we've been excellent neighbors to them for a long time. And where I finally had it is when they started going to very renowned historians and different environmentalists and trying to buy them off and get them to be quiet. And that's where I draw the line. That's why I know this is crap what we're looking at. So anyway, that's for me.
I would be open to a specific, looking at a specific rough draft, but and
I would like to know from
expand
Congressman
it.
Calver how much are these solar panels actually gonna cost taxpayers to put in if we have already sent, you know, if they're already covered by this footprint, what does that mean? I'd like to know that. And then in terms of the solar panels, I mean, what do you wanna see? Do you have any questions pertaining to this?
what I'd like to see is, you know, is pick your battle, okay? Pick your specific battle.
I wish I'd never
And-
seen the place.
And then tell me if this is the hill you die on.
I think that if you start seeing birds that are dying at Norco College, I think that it will probably, the reality is, in a way, if they just played ball, but they're attracting a lot of attention to the people that, quote, give them orders. And the truth of the matter is that there's great arguments to keep the space here, to keep them separate. But I don't see any reason why they're fighting with us the way they're fighting with us. Do they really need to save 60 feet, as you say, you know, a military toilet? I don't know. Part of the problem that I have is, unfortunately, Robin, is that I can't share with you a gazillion hours of experience. So are you saying that maybe if you could see a draft of a letter, something maybe Bill Wilkman put together, and Andy? Are you
For me
open to that?
personally, yeah, I mean, but I don't want us to be involving any more staff time and resources at this point.
I mean, the last thing we have to do in terms of the historic stuff is we go before the commission, and then that's kind of it, see what happens there.
I'm kind of with Greg in the fact that there wasn't paperwork with this and a draft of something, and I have a hard time saying, okay, when there's not a draft or some written information as to exactly what we're going to send them or what our specific requests are, so I would be open to
It's
something like
because
this.
I don't know, you know,
I can't vote.
So I'm not sure what you two are saying. So you want,
I want a draft of something.
Draft, I want something written down, hard copy that I can review and say, yes, I'm willing to put my name on this. And say, yes, this is important to me as a representative of the city
That's fair.
citizens.
that's fair. Are you good with that, Greg?
Yeah, I don't even think it needs to be official, it's just put something together, but
I don't want to use a lot of city staff resources to just further the ongoing battle. I want to.
Well, I don't think there's much you can do after this. I mean, seriously, other than just to say, hey, but you know, ultimately, man, what are we gonna tell our kids? What if we're right? What if I'm right? I've got no science right now to tell me I'm wrong. Just a report that has some serious flaws. And why didn't they do a full impact? Maybe, Berwin, are you good with this, or you just out of it? What's your,
No, I don't have my say about it.
okay, so,
Receive the file, isn't it?
so we have 3 people, though, that would be willing to have a letter? I would.
I'm not approving the letter.
No, just to
This
see a
is a
copy.
step in education that, show me the direction that you want to go specifically. And then I guess I'd say, I agree with the director, but I think I've made some of my reasons
All right,
that
no,
we need to stop fighting, in one sense, fighting our neighbor.
Yeah, I wanna know how you're gonna get a letter or a report without spending staff time. And if you get somebody outside, you gotta get somebody that's not biased one way or the other on it. Or it's just,
Kevin, you read it in the spare time at home.
I said biased.
I'm not sure what you guys, so. Okay, well, so I'm not sure what to do at this point, what you guys are asking.
I don't know how else to ask it, but I would say I think we should receive and file and then just,
And I think I heard what Greg said. If you come back with a specific letter that we can review, a specific letter that addresses one or two items, or even one item, without attacking anybody or asking questions that would be politically unfair to anybody, I'll look at it. I doesn't mean I agree with it, but I will look at it. But I agree, I don't want to see more staff time there. We meet with these people, we just met with them March 9th. That would have been the time to ask the question. Nothing was said. It was, they presented their presentation.
Well, we've asked quite a bit.
I understand, but we have to go through this and understand how the military works, how the federal government works, and basically all the other entities that are up there. But without being specific, to address one or two items, I can't support it. But I didn't see it.
All right, guys. Communications, council communications. Robin?
Nothing.
I have nothing. We're adjourned.
no, we're not. We have staff
Oh, God, I'm
communications.
sorry. I always forget. We're not adjourned. Staff? Eric?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. I just have something I'd like to bring up from time to time in terms of information sharing from your local Norco Sheriff's Office to our citizens and residents. Can everybody hear me okay as I walk? All right, so I'm just going to direct your attention to our Facebook page. Once a week, I try and update information to keep the citizens and city informed on developments and things that we have going on in the city. So anyone who has a Facebook account can access this webpage. Again, it's to educate and help you know what's going on in terms of what we have with our enforcement, our various operations, and things that we have going on. So I think everybody recognizes tomorrow is March 17th. It's St. Patrick's Day. Obviously, from our standpoint, we have a concern when anyone drinks and drives or drives drunk. There's a significant risk to the public, as well as the drivers themselves, to make that decision. So obviously, our recommendation is don't drink and drive. So part of our educational format on our Facebook, we talk about St. Patrick's Day, and we include statistics from, we have a grant with the OTS grant that we fund our DUI checkpoints with, and the National Highway Transportation Safety Association. So we include that information just so you know what you're facing in terms of drinking and driving. We want everybody to be safe and have a safe holiday. So that's one of the things that we have going on. And we also talk about a DUI checkpoint that we have coming up on Saturday. We do these once, usually quarterly, and that's in compliance with our OTS grant. We don't announce where they're at, but we do give you an indication as to time. Obviously, we want to make sure that the motoring public and the pedestrians and everyone that lives and drives through our city is safe. We do not want drunken drivers on the road. There's always an alternative. And then lastly, one of our announcements that we let out today is we've reintroduced bicycle patrol into our field operations. What that means is that we have 5 bicycles that we've had for a number of years, and we've refurbished them, tuned them up, got them back and road ready. And this is a supplement. This is not a primary patrol tactic or a primary patrol function we use. This is supplemental. We use it to direct towards specific issues that we have. It could be crime. It could be quality of life issues. There's a lot of advantages for our deputies to be on the bicycle, not only to fight crime, but to be involved in the community. They're a lot more approachable with our citizens when they're on the bike. They don't have to talk through a car door or a window. They're out and about, and we view this as a good opportunity. You'll probably see them at some of our city events and in some of our city parades. That's it.
Will they have cameras?
Well, they have cameras.
Sure, GoPro, videos.
The sheriff's department does have our body-worn cameras, so they should have those on at all times. That is now mandatory for our station.
It'd be a great effect at the high school.
Keep that in mind.
Eric, would, part of the bicycle patrol would be like, say like Target shopping center?
Yes, and what we do is we look at crime patterns in the city every couple of weeks, and we try and identify what the issues are, and in terms of how to best handle those. So if we have for example, let's say vehicle burglaries are skyrocketing or have escalated to a point where they're substantial, we have to look in terms of how we can best attack those, and the bicycle program is a good way to do that. The officers are very agile when they're on their bicycles. They're able to traverse and access areas that the regular patrol vehicles don't always get to. So that's part of the platform and the advantages of using the bicycle patrol.
Thank
Thank you. Anything else? Thank
you.
you.
Will you be on the bike?
No.
Gina, anything? Brian? Anybody else? Try not to forget you guys next time. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. For what? Oh,
It's me. So, you know, so when Lou calls, I'm like,
That was just an example.